Welcome to today's webinar. Thank you everybody from joining wherever you are in the world and whatever time it is. It is my great pleasure to host Dr. Guillermo Trincado today, who's Associate Professor in the Faculty of Forest Science and Natural Resources at the Universidad Austral de Chile. Dr. Trincado will talk about growth and yield modeling of fast-growing, intensively managed forest plantations in Chile. And he will give a presentation that will be followed by a question and answer period. So we plan to wrap up the official part by around 7 a.m. Vancouver time. So in about 55 minutes. However, we may stick around a little bit longer for questions and networking after that. Before I hand the floor over to Dr. Trincado, I would first like to acknowledge that I'm hosting this webinar from my home in Port Coquitlam, British Columbia, which is located on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Coquitlam First Nation. I thank the Coquitlam who continue to live on these lands and care for them, along with the water and all that is above and below. Second, I would like to remind you that the webinar is being recorded and will be posted on the IUFRO webpage. And third, I would like to acknowledge, I have this here, that this webinar is part of the 2022 Forest Mensuration and Modelling Chats, which is organized by IUFRO Research Group 401, Forest Mensuration and Modeling. We will have 2 more webinars this year, one at the end of October and one at the end of November, and I'll mention the exact dates towards the end of the webinar today. And I'm planning the webinars for 2023, so if you do have speaker suggestions, please email me at bianca.eskelson@ubc.ca. As this is an IUFRO event, I would like to highlight IUFRO's mission to advance research excellence and knowledge sharing and to foster development of science-based solutions to forest-related challenges for the benefit of forests and people worldwide. The webinar series is being organized in the spirit of knowledge sharing and to allow for some interaction and networking while still few in-person meetings are being organized due to COVID-19. And now that I covered the IUFRO requirements, please help me welcome Dr. Guillermo Trincado, and I will stop sharing and you can share your presentation. And I will mute myself and the floor is yours. Thank you for being here today.
Okay, yes, Bianca, just let me know if you see well in the presentation mode.
Yes, it's in the presentation mode and I hear you well, thank you.
Okay, that is a good news for me. Well, firstly, I would like to thank you for this opportunity to provide this talk. And actually, well, we have been working for a long time in growth and yield modeling, especially in forest plantation here in Chile. And well, that will be a pleasure to show you what has been done until now. I have to recognize that that is not all my own work. It's basically all the work that has been done over the last 30 years. And I just want to summarize what we have done and what we are doing right now in terms of growth modeling for supporting the forest industry here in Chile. Well, for probably those that don't know where Chile is located, that is, located in South America. That is how you see that is a very long country, about 4,000 kilometers, a little bit more. And in average, we have 200 kilometers from the coast to the Andes mountain. And where I am right now, that is in Valdivia, how probably Bianca mentioned. Valdivia is located in the continental part of Chile, more or less in the middle, in the coast. And here I would like to show you some pictures of where I am right now, Valdivia. Probably, well, Bianca mentioned to me that visited Valdivia 2001. It looked like this picture over here. And you see that it's surrounded by river and forest, very close from us, natural forests and also plantations. And probably one of the important part of the city is that was a city that was settled by the Spain in the middle 1500. Still, you can see some fortification at the coast, and about 300 years later came a new, people colonization from the Germany, and still you can see these houses of the German style. So we have a mixture here in the native people, Spain, and also Germans, which make the city a little bit special in comparison with other cities in Chile. And basically also this city had the particularity that is also a university city with about 15,000 students. And here you see me, I am here, with a student in some field trip that we do in our classes. And this is me, or our current version of me with our students. So we have a very good relationship with forest here, and we try to teach our students in a practical way, basically. Here, some of place, this is the botanic garden of our university, how you see in the autumn season. It's a very beautiful place that is facing two of our rivers that surrounded our island where the university is located. And here, not only the picture, but also I would like to outline the presentations that I will make. When I received this, or I had the opportunity to prepare this presentation, actually, I was very happy. And also, I was thinking about how to present it, and I have decided to, address these topics. Firstly, I will like to speak about the Chilean forest resources and forest industry and the management of forest plantation in terms of showing to you the importance that forest plantation have in Chile in terms of resources and industry. Then, because of the size of these resources, we need decision support system for forest management. Among them, we have the grow agent simulation systems, and then I will move to the component for long-term maintenance of a grow simulation system, which I find that is the most important part, especially when you are, or you want to have a long-term project or program. Then we are going to see some practical application of grow agent simulation system that normally we take advantage having these simulation systems. And at the end, just a practical application of some of the modeling approaches that has been very useful for us and that we have included in our system. Right now, just an example, and probably to show you how we are using them. Well, the Chilean forestry sector, and overview, we have about 75 million hectares in total, the continental part. And if we see the different soil aptitude of our country, we can say that basically almost half of the country has forestry aptitude. So anyway, we need to, the forestry sector is very important for the country because our climatic and geographical conditions. And right now we have a forest cover of about 70 million hectares, and we can split them in native forests with 40 million hectares, almost 50 million hectares, and forest plantation 2.3 million hectares, which represent about 86% and 40% forest plantation. And for forest plantation, we have basically three main species dominated by radiata pine for about 56% of the total area, and forest plantation, followed by Eucalyptus lolo and Eucalyptus nitens and some other three species, but probably they are not the most important part of the resource. And if we see the forest industry at 2020, and that supported by the forest plantation with this 2.3 million hectares and the native forest, well, very quickly you see that most of the forest industry supported by forest plantations, and we have producing different type of product. And basically, not to go in detail with this slide, but we can say that Chile is producing pulp and soundwood mainly, with this percentage in each of these products. Yeah, and in a minor way, wood panels and veneer, which are also important for us, but not so important with these two ones. And most of them is supported, how I said, with forest plantation. Then we see, if we see the raw wood consumption by tree species, here is the type of industry on the first column, and then we separate the what is provided by each tree species. And again, we see that radiata pine and eucalyptus are providing about 99% of the total roundwood consumption for the country, and in a much minor way, other tree species. Probably in the region, Chile has been the country that has developed in a major way forest plantations. And here is in the black line, you see the total hectares that we have at each year, and you see the increasing amount of forest plantation, especially from the middle 70s, how increased. And if we separate that line in terms of the tree species, you see that radiata pine has been, especially during the first period, the most important tree species that has expanded. And then, about 2002, something like that, is a little bit stable and even decreasing the amount of hectares that we have, and has been increasing the amount of eucalyptus plantation. Mainly this red blue line is showing the plantation of eucalyptus, that was increasing especially during the last period of time since the 90. And if we see the average annual of forest plantation in terms of afforestation and reforestation, again, the total number is given by the black line. And we can say that during the last period of time, the last 20 years, we are planting in average about 100,000 hectares per year. And again, if we separate that as an average in terms of the tree species, again, 55,000 hectares are planted every year in average with radiata pine, and then the rest is planted with Eucalyptus globulus and Eucalyptus nidus, which are the most important tree species for us. Then, in terms of the afforestation and reforestation, this is the black line is the same one than before, and the only thing that I have separated how much of the hectares are afforestation and how much are reforestation. And if you see here that they started during this period of time, 2000, 2020, increase the amount of afforestation of forest plantations, but then it has been reduced and have been increased the amount of reforestation that we have. What it means that the total area is not expanding of forest plantation, and the new plantation are mainly reforestation, which make the current scenario the necessity to maximize the forest productivity and sustainability of this plantation. And probably how is occurring in other countries, there are more pressure on forest plantation, which make that the forest area has been not increased during the last period of time. Is maintained more or less constant. The distribution of forest plantation is what I am showing here. How I said, radiata pine is the most important tree species, and that is the geographical distribution of this plantation. You see that at the coast, in the Central Valley, also in the Piedmont of the Andes, covering almost all this area. Eucalyptus globulus is mostly planted in the coastal range and central part of the Chile, and Eucalyptus nidus, that we have less area, which is more resistant to frost and more resistant to low temperature, is planted in the Piedmont and also in the southern region of Chile. Just to show, the importance and distribution of this plantation, and because this distribution, we need to generate models that can be able to respond to different environmental conditions and soil conditions where this plantation are growing. The forestry sector right now in Chile has, in comparison with other countries in the region, a stable institutionality in terms of the governmental institutions that are taking care of the forest. A big forest company that also has expanded in the regions, like, or countries like Argentina, Brazil, Uruguay. We have diverse NGOs that are taking care of the management that is being done in our forest, and the forest education that started about in the 1950, started the first university that provide with forest engineer or foresters in Chile. And the picture right now is that we have a high plant production in terms of plantation, a very important genetics program, and also nurseries that are producing plants for providing this 100,000 hectares of plantations. Planting process is also very technified right now. In the past was made by hand, but every activity in the forest right now is mechanized or tried to be mechanized in order to avoid accidents for workers. Silviculture probably is very intensive for us in terms of, for radiata pine, here we see a picture of pruning, which is probably not common on something that is very specific for radiata pine for producing clear wood. We have the harvesting process also, which is an area that has been developed very much here in Chile, especially when we consider the different geographical conditions, which make that we need to use different equipment or systems to harvest the wood, and also, well, the wood industry that is also well developed. So that is more or less the scenario that we have right now, and in every part of this process, we need to provide with information, and some of this information is provided by our models. Just to have a picture of the management regime of radiata pine, because that is a requirement for our growth models. Here we can define for radiata pine. I am showing here a table with some example, not necessarily is what we do, they do, or all companies are doing, just an example, but we can define basically 3 management regimes. The most unextensive regime will be, which not appear here, is for pulp production, which means planting and stay, without pruning and thinning intervention until 22 years. Then we have the extensive regimes, which include only thinnings, and more intensive regimes with a harvest age of about 24 years. That one can be different management regimes, even though always intensive, which include pruning and thinning intervention. Here you see that the management regime is determined by the productivity of each stand. So for instance, for this intensive regime, if I increase the productivity measured as a site index, if I increase from 25 to 32, it increases also the possibilities of doing intervention of pruning of thinning. So better quality site, I can make a more intensive management. So it means that for our models, we need to account for each of these regimes or this intervention, and they need to be included in our model. So that is a restriction that we have, and we need to model the effect of this intervention, or include the effect of this intervention in our model. So this table is just showing the regimes, but also the requirement for a growth engine model in this case. This is a picture of a forest area, and you see here different tree species. We have radiata pine here on the right, and eucalyptus plantation on the left. A new planted area. Probably this is area that was just recently harvested, and we have the planted trees here. So that is more or less what we need to manage. And to manage this area of plantations, and especially where we have, big companies, they need for decision making some decision support system. I will just mention one of them, which are very basic and it's very common in all the forestry sector. But we need to know the location and of our plantation, which is managed with a geographical information system. We need to know also the state of each forest, and for that we perform forest inventories, which is contained in a system too. We need to project also the forest, because this is a long-term business that we need to know over time how much wood can be produced. For that, we use this grow and yield modeling systems. And also we need another system, especially for some activities that are done in the forest, the intervention and also harvesting, in which we need to allocate resources that are scarce. We need also a forest planning system. So here in Chile, in terms of the plantation, is a lot of information that is being produced, is a lot of decisions that need to be taken. And also the location of Chile, how you see, is far away from the most important countries. So we need to be very efficient just to be on the mark. So during the last period of time, there has been a great development of the forest sector here in Chile. We believe, that we have done, or in general, it has been done a very good job with that. Here, the monitoring of forest plantation, here I am showing a property that is called Los Pinos. And here you see, the cartography of different forest stands. And here how we do the monitoring, which is probably different that is done in other countries. If I have a stand, for instance, like this one, it means that over the growth of this stand, I need to get information and I need to have updated information on the condition of the stand. And for a given stand, I perform, to get this information, different forest inventories. So a forest inventory is performed at the establishment. It means at the first years, just to evaluate survival of plant and the quality of the plant and the tree growth. Then there is a point in time in which the competition between trees increases. So I need to consider probably the assignment of management regime that will be applied to that stand. So at that point, between 3 or 4 years, I need to take a decision what to do with this stand. So in terms taking as a criteria the productivity measured as site index, I make the assignment of the silvicultural prescription that will be performed on that stand. And then once I do apply or plan the prescription, I need to make some pre or post intervention inventories in terms of when pruning and thinning are performed. So I need to evaluate the result of this prescription, and then probably the best or the forest inventory is a pre-harvest inventory that is done 1 or 2 years before harvest to estimate the commercial volume. So the point here is that under our management regime, we are observing each stand over time, and we have information which is the information which is specific for each stand, which probably is not common in other countries because the growth of the tree is lower, so they don't need a intensity of forest inventory how we are doing here. In terms of modeling, this effort of modeling the growth of forest plantation started more or less in the 70s. And then after some companies of that time started doing their own grow and yield models, the group of companies and the state realized that the best way to go was in a cooperation fashion. And so they created this national simulation model in 1989, which include forest companies, universities, and also the public sector. At that time, probably what the same that happened in other countries, the ownership of the companies on the structure changes over time, so changes also our members. And right now here we have the members that are two universities, companies like CMPC, Cambium, Hankook, Vista Hermosa, and Forestal Los Lagos, and also the CONAF, which represent the forest service in our country. So that's our current members and what we need to support also with our models. The mission that we have, it didn't change over time, is develop operational simulation tools that support decision-making to sustainably increase the profitability of fast-growing forest plantation and natural forest. And we understand the most important component of a simulation system. Basically, to develop simulation system, we need, of course, data. Data are very important, especially for intensive management plantation, using or applying the regime that I mentioned before. Once we have data, we need to analyze this data and do some statistical modeling, transform this data, and summarize this data, and also generate models. But the task with that is not finished, because this model needs to be implemented in a computational system. And once these models are incorporated in a computational system, and especially I would like to mention that important, especially when we are getting a lot of data, is to manage in a data bank management system those data, and also generate another application that is the grow and yield simulation system. We need to transfer it to the final users, which are the decision makers. Well, in this case, the MNS or National Simulation Model is in charge of all these components. And also we are supporting the forest industry directly. So the system that we develop are the systems that are using the forest company. And the problem that are facing the companies with this problem are our problems. So we need to interact very strongly with the forest company or with our members. The relationship between the component probably is in this way, more or less linear. We have data, we model this data, implement this data, and then we provide the result to our users, and backward too. But also here, the most important part, I believe, that is this relationship, is the relationship that they have the final user with each of the three first components. We are interconnecting very strongly, and to maintain a long-term program, we need to maintain a very good relationship and coordination in terms of the needs of this user in order to define which will be our future development of our models, which is very particular, because normally we try to see what is being done in other countries, but we lose the focus in which are our problems. So we are trying to focus in our problems to attack them. I will try to summarize each of these components, to see the importance that they have. In terms of data, data is very general definition. Data we are getting from basically two sources, which are a network of permanent plots. How you see here in the picture on the right side, you see a permanent plot. And also we have some networks of silvicultural trials. They are providing both very important data, but they are different kinds. The permanent plot are providing information about all the geographical distribution of our tree species of interest, but also they provide information about the operational conditions. So we get information about grow and yield, but in operational result. And also It's allow us, because we are changing over time and we include new permanent plot, they allow us also to calibrate our models under changes in genetic material. Genetics is evolving over time. So the genetic that was used with our plantation in the 80s is not the same that we have right now, and it has an impact on our growth, so we can attack it, putting new sample plot. Management regimes are also depending on the demand of type of good, so also it's changing. And also, right now, climate change is another important factor. On the other side, network of silvicultural trials, they have a experimental design with repetition, and then are very important because they can allow us to evaluate the effect of factor of interest in tree and stand growth. And some of our factors that are of interest for plantation are the establishment technique, initial planting density, spacing, and intensity and periodicity and thinning and pruning tree and quality of trees. We are performing annual measurement in radiata pine until 20 years old, and then every 2 years until reaching 30 years, and in eucalyptus until 16 years old annual measurement, and after that until 20 every 2 years measurement. 30 years and 20 years is the end of our measurement for plantations. We have several number of permanent plots and silvicultural trials for each tree species, which it produces a big amount of data that we have available for modeling and for analysis, and that creates the necessity to have a good system to storage this information. Another type of data that is needed is destructive sampling for taper modeling or volume modeling, which also is depending on changes on management regime or condition that need to be sampled. Training is very important to maintain a consistent database, so continuously we make this training the crews. We provide also with system, right now electronic system to capture the data. Long-term growth series of radiata pine of permanent plot look like this one. Here you see the map with the distribution of the sample plot, a big variation of data, because we are capturing the operational growth of plantations, network of silvicultural trials. These are the new network that was installed in 2008. And here we're evaluating the effect of pruning and thinning, different type, depending on the site productivity where these silvicultural trials are located. As an example, we will see this trial, which is the oldest one. The treatment, how you can see, here we have 14 treatment, and the treatment 14 is the control plot. We do just planting and do nothing. And then we are considering different treatment with thinning to waste, 1 or 2 commercial thinnings, and also prune according with the target height of prune height and the percentage of prune trees. These are the treatment that we're using in some of our trials, and you can see that there is a lot of combination of factors in terms of thinning and pruning. And here I will concentrate in these 3 ones, in which we have 700 trees just with a thinning to waste and leave the stand grow, or this other treatment, and we have a first commercial thinning to 700 remaining trees, and then between 11 and 15 years left 400 trees, and these are the prune height and the percentage of tree prune. How they look like right now, and very recently in June that we visit this site, this trial. Here, this trial have 30.6 hectares, so they are big trials. And these are very difficult to maintain also, because the idea is to maintain over for radiata pine until 30 years old. But to maintain 30 years a trial is not an easy task. Many things can happen during that period. And you see here the treatment one that I mentioned, just with a thinning to waste. In contrast, for the same, in the same trial, just changing the management regime, the treatment 8, which consider 2 commercial thinnings and pruning intervention. And you see very clearly the difference in terms of tree growth and volume recovery that you can get from each stand. Data from this type of sources is like this one. Here are the 3 treatments that I mentioned, the control treatment 1 and 2. And here we have another type of information that can allow us to model the effect of thinning and pruning. Yeah, that is the idea. Just contrasting what information is given with a permanent network of permanent plot against these silvicultural trials. So those type of information is needed. Storage information is very important for us because it's a big amount of information. Currently, we have about 5 million records of tree measurements that need to be maintained. Here is I am showing the screen of our database management system. You can choose the trial that you want to look at. Then in the trial, trial is composed by different repetitions. In this case, we are looking at repetition 3, and these are the plots of repetition 3, and each line of here represents the growth of each individual tree. If I choose to look at this plot, you can go more in deep and see each tree and the measurement that has been performed for each tree. So I maintain track of the measurement just to see if there are consistency in our data. For modelers, it's very important to receive data and probably clean data. If you don't receive clean data, you are in trouble because you need to check every measurement that has been done. So we try to maintain consistency with our data. Models that has been developed are basically 3. The main one, or the first one, is Insigne, which is basically a projection system for RADIATA pine that can make projection from 30 years until 30 years, simulate the effect of subsoiling with control and fertilization during the first 3 years, and simulate the effect of pruning and thinning interventions. Eucasim, that is a model done for eucalyptus plantation. It made projection to 20 years old, simulate the effect of subsoiling with control and fertilization, has do Insigne. And for Eucalyptus globulus, there is a model for managing copies plantation. And for Eucalyptus nitens, which is the species, Eucalyptus species with faster growth, it has been some function to evaluate the effect of pruning and thinning intervention. And hybrid model is a model that incorporates the effect of climate and edaphic condition and stand growth. And that is a program that started in 2011. And basically, it's tried to estimate productivity at regional level. Insigne and OCASIP has different level of resolution. Here we have stand level growth model, stand table projection model, distance independent individual tree growth model, and compatible growth projection model, which may have a list of 3, but compatible means that conciliate some of the parameters with the stand level growth model. So it's a conciliation between a stand level growth model and distance independence individual tree growth model. That is a compatible growth model. Well, I will skip these ones. The models are also constructed for different growth zones. Here we have for each tree species the different growth zones. For the RADIATA pine, we have defined 10 growth zones. So it means that models are developed for each of these growth zones. The same for Eucalyptus globulus and Eucalyptus nitens, in which we have defined 3 growth zones for each tree species. So it's a lot of effort to maintain also model for each growth zone. Not model, but also data on all what it means, to make the construction of models. The implementation of growth models has been a very important part and also has been involved because technology evolved. and also the problems that we need to solve also increases. Here we have the RADIATA, which was the first simulators that was done by this group. In the past, how I said, were other simulators too in the 80s. But here it how it looked like in 95, and then 97, 2000, we have a more Windows version of Insigne. And if you notice, it changed from RADIATA to Insigne, which is referring to RADIATA Pine, the same. But here that was the Windows version. And 2 years later, it was the Eucasim, which was the first simulator for eucalyptus plantations. And at that time, were 2 different systems in 2 different platforms. But right now, what we have from 2010, just 1 platform that have all the simulators that we have developed. So the user can go just a single platform, select what kind tree species want to simulate, choose it, and make the simulation. And also, which is very important, is that has an integrated forest inventory processing system. So the user don't need to process an inventory to go to other application, can use the same application to do it. Training, because it is involved the computational system, it's getting more complicated in terms of use it. So we need to continuously train to the users, and also if we add new capabilities, also to show them which are the new capabilities and how they need to be used. This is the grow and yield simulation system main screen. And here, how I mentioned, are the 3 simulators that we have for Insigne, Eucasim, and also a new one in Nativo that have been incorporated. Here we have another screen in which we can define the type of input data, if they are stand label data, the stand table, or the list of trees. And also some of the initial parameters for making the simulation. Some application of this is, for instance, I mentioned that the establishment technique is very important for us. Here you see a picture with a new plantation, and if we want to simulate the effect of some management regime as the establishment, we can define if that is application of subsoiling has been applied, yes or not. If we apply wet control, intensity, without, total, or banded, the period of application, it means if I apply during the first year, during the first and second year, and so on. And the type of fertilization also can be chosen by the user here for performing the simulation. Just an example, if we are going to simulate the effect of the establishment technique and initial age of 0 years and final age of 25, and initial stand density of 1,250 tree per hectare and a site index, and then we have without establishment or with establishment regimes, we can get the simulation of the result of that. And here we are showing in the blue line without establishment, and then the effect of each of the other factors that can be included in the simulation. And then finally, if I include all the establishment technique in comparison with do nothing, here is the difference that we have in the growth curve that has been simulated for this case. Regime thinning and pruning intervention also model. We can, thinning, we can define the opportunity, normally the age, the intensity, the remaining tree per hectares, and also the time of thinning that we want to perform. We can perform until 5 thinnings or simulate the effect of until 5 thinnings, and the same for the pruning. Pruning required to define the opportunity, normally the age, the intensity, the prune height. Normally we do different leaf to reach a given prune height target, the selection, how many trees need to be pruned, and what type of the tree we are going to prune. The big ones, normally are pruned. And also the system allowed to make simulations. Again, an example, here you have the initial age, final age, the initial stand density at the age of 4 years, the dominant height, the basal area of a stand, and 3 different regimes. Without thinning and pruning, regime 2 just with a thinning, and then in regime 3, we include thinning and pruning. And then again, we can make the simulation in terms of survival. That is not, well, here we have do nothing, just make the forest grow, and here is the thinning that are performed for the regime 2 and 1, no difference in survival for regime 2 and 3, but we have differences in terms of total volume that again we shows here the curve with do nothing, and here the red ones and the green ones are the regime 2 and 3, more intensive the regime 3, less volume, total volume until the 25 years. But if we look at this 25 years in terms of the product recovery, we see the differences. Even though we have with regime 3 more intensive lead volumes in comparison with do nothing, well, here we recover an important amount of burn log that is not possible with the other regimes, which increases also the value recovery for this type of forest. So it's just an example of what kind of applications you can, application for the growth models, or how you can use them to make projections. Another practical application is projecting a forest inventory, which probably that is a stand. Here, the red point that you see are the plot location. This is a stand, Radiata pine stand with 20 plots, 500 square meter each plot. The basal area of this stand is 16 square meters per hectare, dominant height and the site index. And here, how we process this type of data is just to consider a simulation. The simulation corresponds to the stand forest inventory. And this inventory contains, how I said, 20 plots. So there is a hierarchical relationship for this inventory. A stand contains plot, but also plots contain trees. So in this way, we have the data, and if we want, we can project this stand using an individual tree label growth model, or we can use the stand label growth model. We can choose. I mean, we have the list of trees, but even though if we want long projection, will be more, it's better to project using the stand growth model. And if we want short projection, probably having the information, the tile information at tree level will be allowed us to use the individual tree growth model. So for this data, if we want to make a projection to 25, we can make it. And here the curves are showing to you the curves that for this stand is produced with the stand label model, tree label model, and the compatible model that I mentioned that try to use the list of tree and then conciliate the value that I get with the stand label model. So how you see here in the short term, there is not big difference between the individual tree and the stand label model, but over time, normally what happens, at least for us, is that the estimate that you can get with the individual tree label model will be more limited in comparison with the stand label or the compatible model. So normally what we use for long-term projection, use a stand label model. For short-term projection, you can use the tree label. And in terms of the projected diameter distribution at the same age, here is just a comparison between the stand label model, which provide the most consistent values in comparison with the tree label model and the adjusted compatible model. So even though we have compatible values in terms of basal area, dominant height, and number of trees, well, not necessary for these three parameters, we will get the same diameter distribution. So it's the way how it works, this model. Well, I think that probably we are on time, Bianca. I want not to use more time than needed, so I will skip the other ones, if you agree.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you so much for the presentation. Just let me share my screen here again.
But let me was just one just one part.
Yes.
Just for finish, I left the last one because I see the time. It is we are more or less on time. So just I want just to finish acknowledging the effort that is done by the MNS and the members. That if because of this effort, it made possible this presentation on and all this work that I have presented, and I would like to acknowledge it. I would also to acknowledge you, Bianca, for the effort for preparing this all these presentations. And of course, I would like to thank to the audience for the attendance and the attention, and open to questions and comments that you may have.
Thank you, Guillermo. I will share the screen real quick to just talk about the upcoming webinars. So we'll have a little bit of time for question and answers for Dr. Trincado, but I would like to announce that we have 2 more webinars this year in this calendar year. The next one will be on October 24th. So I have by Dr. Svetlana Sarela from Norway, and she will talk about the effects of multicollinearity in model-based inference. And then on November 28th, we will have a contribution from Northern Taiwan University by Dr. Tseng Yila on field study on critical height sampling and its antithetic variance. The registration, I will post the link to the registration link for the October webinar. The registration is already open. Announcements for the upcoming webinars will be posted through the IUFRO Division 4 mailing list. And you can subscribe through this link. I will post the links in the chat in a little bit as well. And the webinars are also posted on the IUFRO calendar. And if you do have speaker suggestions for future webinars, please email me. And with that, thank you for your attention. And please help me thank Dr. Trincado for his great presentation and the insights on the intensively managed plantations in Chile. It's been very great to hear about the NMS. That's very fascinating that that's available in Chile. So with that, I will stop sharing the screen and turn off the recording and open the floor to questions that you can unmute yourself and ask questions, or you can ask questions in the chat.